Well, welcome everybody. It is Friday, October 25th. This is a live program, not recorded, and I appreciate you joining us. The title of this program is Radical Relevance, and I'm going to talk about how to sharpen your marketing message, cut through the noise, win more clients. We are sponsored by the wonderful folks over at Insurance WebEx. So thanks to them for sponsoring this and making this available to you. I hope you get a lot of value. Please be ready to take lots of notes because this is going to be a pretty high content program. We're going to deal on the level of principles, we're going to deal on the level of strategies, and we're going to deal on the level of tactics. So you're going to walk away with some very specific things you can do differently, hopefully, to attract more clients. We are recording this, and I will send a link to the recording to everyone on this call, on this WebEx webinar, and so you can catch some things maybe you didn't catch first time around, share it with others, all that good stuff. And questions. We'll take questions certainly at the end, but I will also stop from time to time and just look at the chat box and the question box to see if anybody's put anything in. And there is my email address. If you have a question that occurs later, an hour, a day, a week, a month, a year, a decade, just shoot it over, let me know. And there's also an address there for some other resources, a lot of free resources at referralcoach.com/resources. So we have a problem, you and I, in our business. And in fact, we actually have three problems when it comes to attracting and winning new clients. Number one, our prospects are experiencing marketing message overload, right? They are inundated by marketing messages. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and how the brain deals with that. And I think you'll find it not just interesting, but helpful. Prospects expect you to know something about them. That's why this program and my book is called Radical Relevance, because the way to be relevant is to know something about whoever you're contacting. And I'll talk to you a lot about that today and how to get to know them more and better and craft more relevant and compelling messages. And that's really going to be the meat of the program. But we're also going to talk a little bit about one of our biggest obstacles, which is inertia, right? A lot of our prospects are either stuck doing nothing and seem to be unwilling to move unless we can craft a compelling reason for them to move in some new direction, or they're moving in a specific direction and they're stuck moving in that direction. They're happy with who they're working with. They think they've got complete advice or whatever. That may or may not be the truth. And these are obstacles that we face, particularly related to our messaging. So this marketing message overload, I mean, you experience it, I experience it, our prospects experience. In fact, it's been estimated that the average North American gets about 3,000 marketing messages every 24 hours. And let's say you sleep 7 hours an evening. If you're lucky, that's about 176 messages per hour, about 3 messages a minute. It's pretty crazy in terms of the messages that are coming at us. And so what does the brain do? How does the brain of your prospect cope with this flood of information? And knowing this will really help you craft better messaging to attract and win the right people. So what we know about the brain is that it's scanning 6 times per second. Am I safe? Right? What's my environment? Looking around. Am I safe? Does it look right? And about 3 times per second, it's saying, is there an opportunity? The brain loves opportunity. The brain loves taking action, but only if it feels safe, only if it feels comfortable. And so, what is the purpose of the brain? What's it trying to do? Well, obviously, it's trying to keep us alive, right? And one of the ways it does that is to conserve energy. And also, it likes to move towards clarity away from confusion. Why? Because confusion takes energy, right? If you don't feel clear, if you're confused about something, the brain has to work a little harder. Brain doesn't like that. Brain thinks keep organism alive, spend less energy. If that's confusing, I'll move on to another message that's less confusing. And so this is really fundamental to how we think about crafting our message towards prospects and our existing clients and centers of influence. And you'll see how that plays a part in as what we do today. So how do you get your messages through to your prospects, right? How do you cut through all that noise, all that resistance? Well, you have to hit the bullseye in their brain, right? You have to resonate with the brain, with the message that's relevant. It grabs their attention. If it's not relevant, they just pass it by, right? They'll ignore it. And it has to be compelling. By compelling, I think in terms of moving to action, right? So if it's relevant and we grab their attention and then we're compelling, we'll maintain their attention and move them to whatever action we desire. It could be to respond to our voicemail or our email, or meet with us, or buy what we're selling, whatever it is, whatever action we're looking for. We have to be able to compel people to take action. So that's a little bit about the brain and the marketing message overload. The bulk of today, we're going to talk about, the fact that our prospects expect us to know a little something about them, and how do we do that? And how do we do that in a way that's very powerful for us? So it's my contention we live in a radically relevant world, hence the title of the book. Let me give you some examples. You kind of know this, you see this every day, you maybe haven't thought about it this way. So what's the ultimate relevance machine? Well, you can probably guess by the colors I've had here on the screen. It's Google, right? You do a Google search and you're 2 words into your 8-word search, and it already knows what you're looking for. It already populates the field, right? I mean, it's amazing. It's uncanny. It's even scary a little bit. And so obviously Google is all about finding relevant information to you. It knows about you. It knows about the things you've searched for in the past. It probably knows about what you're going to do in 10 years. Who knows? It's amazing. YouTube, owned by Google, also is a relevance machine. As you can see here, there's a picture of Neil Peart, the drummer for Rush. I'm a Neil Peart fan. I'm an old rock and roll drummer. And so you can see by what else they show is other videos, drummer videos, right? They know me. They know the kinds of things I like to watch. If I hovered over your YouTube channel, I could probably see what you're into a little bit. Might be scary, but that's cool. And so it's all about relevance. Amazon too, right? People who bought this, or people who looked at this also looked at this, or also looked at that. I just happened to find this book, Beyond Referrals, by that guy, Bill Gates, or Bill Cates, whatever his name is. But Amazon is a relevance machine, right? Relevance has been around forever. It's just with the internet and big data, it's becoming even more so. When's the last time you went to buy water? Look at all the different kinds of waters, right? There's with vitamins, without vitamins, smart water, dumb water, mineral water, spring water, flavored water, fizzy water. It's the manufacturer's attempt to be relevant to you, to the shopper, right? That's why there's so many choices these days. Toothpaste, same thing, with whitening, without whitening, all the stuff, right? The breath freshener, the fluoride, you name it, right? So if these businesses go to these lengths to create relevant messaging and relevant products, in this case, how can we not go in that direction? How can we not think in terms of being more relevant? Here's a very interesting thing. So this is an electronic billboard, as you can tell, and the electronic billboards, and there are more and more of them, of course, around the country, and they get their data as to what to display by the car apps, by Waze and Google Maps and all the different apps that cars use to travel from one location to the other. They have a lot of data about the drivers, and what sign is displayed on a billboard at any given time is based on the demographics of the people passing by the sign at that particular time of day. Now, this sign, like a lot of them, have a pollen counter, a pollen sensor in it. And whenever the pollen count gets up to a certain level, then it displays, something about this is Target Pharmacy. It could be CVS, could be Walgreens, could be any of those, right? And so this is the radically relevant world we're living in. And so how do we stand out from other advisors, other agents, other consultants? How do you stand out in a crowd? Well, certainly the straightest line to relevance, right? The way to become most relevant most quickly with most people is an introduction from a trusted source, not just a referral, but an actual introduction. And that's how you get into that person's world. And that's why for the last 25 years, I've been helping folks figure out how to do this, how to get more referrals, how to get better introductions. And, maybe you have one of my books, Don't Keep Me Secret, or Get More Referrals Now, or Beyond Referrals. And I'm taking a new direction, not a new direction, but I'm adding to, I should say, with my newest book, Radical Relevance, which will be, it's actually technically available on Amazon now, although we're still tweaking and fine-tuning the message that goes out when people get there. But, if you want to go get it, you could now, or you could wait a day and we'll have the messaging a little better. But it's there, it's ready. But anyway, how'd this come about? Well, when I first got started in this business, I was teaching people how to ask for referrals without being aggressive and without looking needy or pushy, etc. And I found that a lot of people weren't referable in the first place. So then I started focusing a lot on client engagement and becoming more referable, more introducible. And then, of course, the do not call regulations come in all the various ways where it's difficult to reach people. And that's where Beyond Referrals came about, where we focus a lot on the introduction. So one takeaway real quick now, when you're with a client, when you're with a prospect, when you're with a center of influence, use the word introduction. Don't use the word referral. Use the word introduction, because that's what we want, right? We want to get introduced. We want to get connected. Well, I was interviewing some top producers at a firm in preparation for a keynote speech. And I asked them, when you get introduced, when you get referred, what do you say to the new prospect? And I was amazed at the lame responses that people came up with. And what I learned is that these folks were still pretty successful, is when the trust level between the referral source and the prospect is really, really high, that'll compensate for bad messaging. That'll compensate for running bad meetings because the trust is so high, and you leverage that borrowed trust. But that doesn't always work. And at some point, that borrowed trust runs out, and we've got to have a message that's going to drive people to be interested and take action. So that's why I wrote the book, Radical Relevance. And like I said, it should be on Amazon at this point. Just go into Amazon, hit books, hit Radical Relevance. It should be, I think, the second book that comes up at this point. There's another book with a name, but it has nothing to do with the work you do. Anyway, so go check that out if you want. I'm also going to try send out a formula too. I'll show you this formula later, but just send me your email address and just say you're on the WebEx webinar, or put what to do formula, what do you do formula in the subject line, whatever you want in the subject line, and I will send you this. I'll send you some other free things as well. We'll get to this formula in a little bit, but I just want you to be aware of this. And later, I'll talk to you a little bit about the complimentary strategy sessions that I offer. I just want to let you know that is coming. It's free, so I'm not selling anything, and I love helping people with this stuff. And if you're interested in a complimentary strategy session, so what to do formula. Well, Brutus, you got to send it in an email. I appreciate that, but send it to BillCates@referralcoach.com, and we'll get it out to you. All right, so. Is your marketing message relevant enough to attract attention and compelling enough to create action on your website, on your LinkedIn profile, on anything you print or send, and email messages that you send to prospects, anything that you put together, verbally, written? We always have to think in terms of being relevant enough to attract the right people and compelling enough to create action. So as we get into this, it's not an aside, it's an important point that will inform everything moving forward, a little more brain science. So this brain scanning methodology called magnetic resonance tomography, MRT, shows the part of the brain that's active during the decision-making process. And a famed neuroscientist by the name of Antonio Damasio discovered that subjects who could not feel emotion could not make decisions. Right? They couldn't feel happiness. They couldn't feel sadness. They couldn't feel anything. And they therefore couldn't make a decision. So, some people say, well, how do they live their life? Well, checklists and habits. It's probably not easy. But what that tells us is that at the heart of every single decision that every single human makes, it's an emotional response. Now, I know I get a lot of weird looks from the analyticals. And look, I'm not saying that the left brain stuff and the lists and the statistics and all of that isn't important. That is important. And at the end of the day, it creates an emotional response. So we need to know that as we get into this, because that's at the heart of being relevant and compelling people to take action. So let's start a little bit on the little higher level with what I call strategic relevance, some strategic decisions that you want to make. You want to make sure you're crystal clear on who fits your business, who doesn't fit your business. What is your target market? If you don't have one, I'm going to make the case for having one. Who is your persona or avatar? These are fancy marketing words for ideal client. I like to use the word right fit client. And what makes you a little different out there in the marketplace? So these are some of the strategic decisions you want to make. And then we'll get tactical. So let's talk a little bit about this target idea. The growth power of a target market. First of all, it's easier to identify ideal prospects when you find a niche. It could be employees in a large company, There's a financial advisor in Cincinnati, very, very successful. He's probably number 1 or 2 across the whole country. He's got a large employer in Cincinnati, which is Procter and Gamble, and he's one of the go-to guys there. And so it's easy to identify folks. It could be owners of businesses in a specific industry. You get to know these people better, right? And you'll see how we go with this a little bit later, but you bring better solutions because you know their world a little bit better. If it's a company, you know their benefits package, probably better than their HR department knows it. You can join forces with other centers of influence. I'll give you a couple examples. One specific example, is a gentleman in Canada, one of my coaching clients, who his market is dentists. And he just through his networking and getting to know people, he identified a CPA firm, an accounting firm in Canada, that one of their vertical markets is dentists. And he has a kind of a unique approach to financial planning for dentists that fits their world quite well. And so once a quarter, this CPA firm hosts a dinner for the sole purpose of introducing him to their dentist clients. I mean, you could hardly pay for that kind of marketing. In fact, you couldn't. It would taint it. But the fact that the CPA firm says, look, I want you to meet this guy. He works with dentists. He works with our clients. We love his process. And what does it cost him for that dinner? Well, nothing. Not only does he get in front of about 10 to 15 great prospects, but he also gets a free nice dinner. All right. So this is the power of targeting a market. Your message is going to be better, right? It's going to be more relevant. It's going to be more effective because you know their world and they can see that you know their world. One of the most powerful concepts and dynamics in sales and marketing is empathy, right? People want you to have a sense of who they are, what their struggles, what their desires are. And by targeting a niche, it makes it easier to find those things out. So here's a way it could go, right? So let's say you want to work with wealthy individuals. I don't know any financial professional who really doesn't want to work with wealthy. That may not be your focus, but if you want it to be, that's cool. Okay, we know there's a lot of wealth with business owners, so maybe you make a decision to focus on business owners. Can you go more narrow than that? Well, how about business owners in a specific industry? And the bullseye for you could be multi-generational business owners in a specific industry. Now, a lot of this will, of course, depend on your geography. If you're in a really small town, you may not be able to go as narrow as this, but you get the principle. And one of the principles of what we're going to cover here is just this idea of going more narrow, more targeted, looking for your bullseye for your business. Todd McDonald, I was just on a call with Todd earlier today. Todd said early in his, and Todd's like number 2 in his company across the country. He says early in his career, he asked top producers, if you were able to start over, what would you do differently? And he said almost to a person, the answer was the same. I'd focus on a target market. I'd try not to be all things to all people. And so that's what Todd decided to do almost right out of the gate in his new business. And so this is Todd McDonald's website, Broadstone Advisors. This is not your typical financial advisor website, I think you would agree. If someone who's in his target market goes to his website, they go, oh, this guy knows me. Because Todd's market is family-owned, closely held, heavy construction firms. His clients build roads, they build bridges, they build commercial buildings, they build runways. And so he's got various photographs of even him on the work site. And so he has a relevant feeling from the beginning. Now, the one thing I would coach Todd to do is have a statement somewhere here in the middle of this photo that mentions the fact that he works for those folks. I mean, it's kind of obvious, and he works almost exclusively from referrals. Nonetheless, that's probably would be a good idea for him. So I don't know about you, but I kind of miss, the retired couple walking down the beach, the clip art that most advisors have on their website that you probably have on your website. All right. Let's make it more targeted. So I just ran into this guy, Craig, not Craig. Oh, I forgot his first name. It'll come up in a second. And he just made the decision to go to optometrist. He's focusing on the financial needs of optometrists. Very narrow field, right? Adam, sorry, Adam. Just getting to know Adam now. And this is what he told me. He says, since making the decision to go all in and exclusively serve optometrists, my only regret is not doing this 5 years ago. As I've become exclusive, opportunities have become greater, and greater in both quality and quantity. And you can see there's a screen capture from his LinkedIn page, right? Right under, instead of putting a title, a financial advisor or insurance specialist or whatever you might have in yours, he has a statement, that a benefit-oriented statement that shows his target market. And that's what you want to do in your LinkedIn profile. You want to have a statement there that says, what do you do and who you do it for? And we'll give you a little more of that formula in a minute, right? So this is the power. One more example of this is Russ Thornton. And Russ Thornton, Wealth Care for Women, the title of his company tells it all, right? Clarity and comfort around your money so you can explore what's possible in your life. If you look at Russ' site, you'll notice that almost all the verbiage on his site is not industry jargon. It's the words and the concepts that his clients and his prospects use, right? And I'm going to go down a little further, because you can see that the copy, right? This is not the typical kind of text that you see on a website. He's speaking the language of his prospects and clients, right? And it's very easy on what steps to do to start to work with them, right? Clarity, request a call. We'll do a discovery session, and we'll create your plan, right? This is very clear. This is how we work. And at the bottom of the page, he has his why, his client-centered why. Why is this man focusing on wealth care for women? And he explains a little bit of what happened with his mom when she went through a divorce around money. And this is when he made a decision. He wants to help women go through this. And so he explains that. And so he makes a really good personal connection with these folks right away from this website. He attracts the people he wants to attract, and he doesn't attract the people he doesn't want to attract. Same thing with Adam and Todd. Aaron Gray, I've worked with Aaron a lot over the last couple of years. And one of the things we did with Aaron is making sure that everyone in his team is on the same page with talking about the value. And when you get everybody on a team, everybody who's client-facing and back office is on the same page, how they talk about the firm when they're out and about, social settings, business settings, it's actually led to more clients, better clients that are just right for the firm, because everyone's on the same page. Pretty similar to what Adam said just a second ago, right? So to target or not to target. A lot of people are afraid to narrow their focus like this. The thinking is, if I just focus on these folks, then I'll miss all these others, right? I'll miss all this other opportunities, the fear of missing out on opportunity. And the truth is, you'll be so successful in your niche, in your target market, you won't even notice the other opportunity that perhaps you're missing. And it's not like you have to give up on who you're serving now. You just slowly but surely, all your outbound, all your energy goes towards attracting the people you really, truly want to serve. And it gets easier to get referrals. All that sort of stuff happens when you target a market. The problem is that most people, when they write about their value, they speak out their value, email, website, whatever it is, they tend to widen the tent a little too much. They tend to open the message up a little bit to try to attract more people, when you should actually be doing the exact opposite. The problem is, if you try to appeal to everyone, you run the risk of appealing to no one. So if you have more than one ideal client, more than one persona, then you want to divide your messaging on your website. You want them to self-identify where that person can go. So for instance, on our website, we have three folks that visit. We have individuals like yourself. And so we have a button. If you're an individual, click here. If you're an executive with a company, home office type, click here. If you're looking to hire someone to speak at a conference or workshop, click here. Those are our three main avatars or personas on our website. And then they get information that's specifically related to them, rather than trying to make a homepage that appeals to everybody, because then you run the risk of appealing to nobody. Now, I want to have a little fun story here. And if you have any questions as I'm going, please type them in. I'll try to answer some as we go. Nothing right now. A little comment from Brutus. No problem, Bruce. So I like my gifts that I give out to clients and prospects and folks that give me referrals, make introductions, to be tailored. You get a lot of bang for your buck. I know that you guys have restrictions on how much you can spend. Could be the industry restrictions, no more than $100 per client, or it could be just your own pocketbook restrictions. Nonetheless, you get a lot of bang for your buck when you tailor something. So I do all kinds of neat things. I just want to tell you one story. So one of my clients, Craig Strent, owns a mortgage brokerage called Apex Home Loan. Very successful. He's got about 50 mortgage representatives working for him. And so I sat down with Craig when I was writing this book to interview him because I knew he'd have a lot of good things to say. And I wanted to say thank you more than just buying breakfast for him. So I called up Steve Dorfman, who works at Apex, and I said, Steve, tell me a little bit about Craig. I want to find some thank you gift that's relevant to his world. And he says, well, he loves Lincoln. He loves everything about Lincoln. So I'm thinking, all right, I'll buy a book on Lincoln. He says, he's read every book on Lincoln. I'm thinking, okay, I won't buy a book on Lincoln. And all the way, and as he's about to hang up, he says, by the way, he likes socks. He likes fun socks. He's a member of the Sock of the Month Club. So he's always got some fun socks on. I'm thinking, okay, great. Lincoln. That's what I'm thinking. Lincoln, right? So I find this nice bust of Lincoln. It stands about 9 to 10 inches tall. It's bronze. Pretty cool. About $35. And of course, Amazon, in its infinite wisdom, is saying, people who looked at this item also looked at these items. And lo and behold, isn't there a sock with Abe Lincoln's mug on it? And so I bought the socks too. And Craig took me out to lunch to say thank you for the thank you. And so this is how you can have some fun with making even the gifts. By the way, if someone gives you a referral, makes an introduction, send them a little thank you something, at least a handwritten note would be minimum, but a little something could be coasters with their college logo on it, whatever it might be for you, right? So let's get a little more narrow. Let's get to the bullseye, right? So the bullseye is what I like to call a right fit client for you. Everybody's right fit client is going to be different, but a right fit client is someone you just love to work with, right? You have a number of these. These people are perfect. They love your value. They love your value for all the reasons you want them to love your value. Maybe you've built a little bit of business friendship with them, perhaps. They allow you to do the kind of work that you want to do with your clients. And so everybody would like more right fit clients. Now, when you first get started in the business, a right fit client is anyone who fogs a mirror, meaning they're breathing. But somewhere along the line, you start to get a little more selective, right? So maybe your target market is divorced or widowed women. Maybe it's affluent couples. I'd like to go a little more targeted than that, but that's not a bad place to start. Could be young couples, right? Especially if you're younger and you resonate better with younger couples. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't recommend couch potatoes, not a good target market. Business owners, but maybe not any business owner, maybe successful business owners. And of course, perhaps in a specific industry, as we talked about earlier. So what is your right fit client? Who is in marketing, they call this the buyer persona. You'll hear that word more and more because it's becoming more and more popular. So a buyer persona is a semi-fictional representation of your right fit client. And the more targeted you can get with this, the better. And like I said, you might have more than one persona. You might have two. You might have three. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that. Just make sure your messaging is tailored to each one separately. So certainly the demographic stuff you want to know, age, gender, financials, location, occupation, all those sorts of things. Those are important to know. But since we know that people don't make a decision without emotion, we've got to make sure that we attend to the psychographic aspects of our right fit clients, of our ideal clients, right? And if you're in a specific industry, a specific company, specific age group, gender, whatever it may be, then the fears, the concerns, the challenges, you're going to know them a little bit better. You're going to have the right words around them. Same thing with opportunities and aspirations. You're going to have a sense of what their opportunities are. You may know about opportunities that they don't even know about because you're targeting them as an ideal client. And so since we know that every decision is emotionally based, this is almost more important than demographics. I mean, demographics are important. Look, if you want to work with affluent people, what does affluent mean to you? I get that. But we also need to know this. You're going to keep seeing how this plays out as we go. So here's a very hypothetical. This is something I put together. This is a picture, a clip art. This gentleman, Edward Entrepreneur, right? Medical device research and manufacturing. He's a small business owner. The demographics on the left, right, for the most part, and the psychographics on the right. You want to know, as narrow as you can get it, who are you trying to attract into your business? And the more clarity you have on who you're trying to attract into your business, the more likely you're going to attract them. The more likely you're going to describe who you serve the best and how you do it in ways that's going to resonate with them, right? But if you never think through this and you don't get to the level of detail like this, you may never quite get the people you really want, right? You may have a notion of who you want to attract, But the clearer you get, the more likely you're going to be able to make that happen. So this is what I'm talking. This is your bullseye. As best you can do this. Who are your personas? Who are your right fit clients? Right? What are their motivators? What are their frustrations? How will you position yourself to help this particular person? So a lot of folks who target business owners, present themselves as a personal CFO or a financial quarterback, where they help with all aspects, benefits for employees as well as the personal financial stuff, right? So do you know your bullseye? Do you know your right fit client? Do you know who you'd really like to attract? And have you detailed it to the level we talked about just a second ago? And when you start to do this and everyone else who works with you knows this, then you're going to start saying the right things and doing the right things to attract these people into your life. The more precise, the more powerful, right? Resist the urge to expand the tent, narrow the tent. And if you have more than one tent, make sure they're clearly defined tents so that when you reach out to the different types of right fit clients, you have the right messaging for them. Let's talk about what makes you different, because this is always a conversation in this and every other industry, right? How do you stand out? How do you become relevant? Well, one thing I know, when I do my live presentations, workshops, keynote speeches, I always ask the group, I said, so when you talk about what makes you different, please raise your hand if you talk about your great client service or how you really care about your clients. And about 75, 80% of the hands go up. And I go, all right, so maybe that's not a differentiator. I'm not saying you don't talk about this, but this is not a differentiator. This is the price of being in the game, giving great service and caring about your clients. So people only care about your differentiation if it's relevant to them, if there's a specific benefit useful to them, right? So what makes you different? You got to make sure that you communicate that in a way that there's a benefit to them. And I'm going to give you a formula in just a second that might help you with this. Reminder that all of this stuff is in my new book, Radical Relevance. Pardon the shameless plug. All right, so here's the formula. Are you ready? I got this from Karen Kopp, by the way, who wrote a book called Biz Dev Done Right. And she helps folks with very large, complicated sales, but this formula will work with any level. So anyone can, but only a few can. For example, now these words, anyone can, but only a few can, it could be only we can. So these will change slightly, but you'll get the idea. Let me give you an example. So you could say to someone, look, many financial professionals can talk about various financial tools and products. That's not hard to find. But very few can provide you with a comprehensive financial plan that provides you with a tremendous peace of mind, et cetera, et cetera. Or you could say, but very few know your industry like I do. But very few know your company and your company's benefits package like I do, because I focus on your company. I focus on your industry. And then for an example, you always want to use a for example. I'm going to give you another formula in a minute, and you'll see how this for example brings the other things to life. The first two things are kind of cool, but when you create an example, then it brings it to life and makes it more real for people. Notice I use the words in the example. I was meeting with a new client who was recently introduced by his sister, right? What am I doing there? I'm kind of planting that little seed. I'm just putting that little thing in there that we run a business based on introductions, based on referrals, right? So try this again for yourself, right? And send it to me later. Tell me what you came up with. Many financial professionals can do this, can talk about that, can tell you about this, can sell you Medicare benefits, can sell you life insurance, can sell you long-term care insurance, but very few can, right? Can do it this way, can do it the way we do. Or very few have the knowledge of your industry or the knowledge of your company or the knowledge of your demographic like we do, for example, and that brings you to life with them. So it's critical that whenever you talk about something that makes you a little different, that you tie it to a benefit. So let me give you an example. I'm working with a bank up in New England. They only deal with commercial accounts, and they identified about 119 unique selling propositions, things about the bank that they feel they can use that are somewhat unique and can separate them from the competition. And when I looked through the list, only about 4 or 5 of them were actually tied to a benefit. So for instance, one of their USPs was, well, we've been in existence for 127 years. And okay, that's a feature, but where's the benefit to that? How do we know how someone's going to interpret that benefit? What does that benefit mean? Right? Does it mean you've been around for so long that you're stodgy and you're not up to date with the technology and the way people like to bank these days? Or does it mean you're solid, you're not going anywhere, you're financially sound? What does that mean? And so we got to tie it to a benefit that means something to that prospect. Otherwise, there's no point in talking about it. You don't want to be different for different's sake. You want to be different in a way that demonstrates your value. So let's get a little more tactical, shall we? Let's talk about tactical relevance. What I mean by this is solving the right problems, using the right words, and then ultimately compelling people to take action, which we'll get to near the end. So I want to show you a model of a way to look at the problems that you solve, and I think you'll find this pretty helpful. This could actually be tactical or strategic. And this model is inspired by a gentleman by the name of Michael Skock, who's a venture capitalist in New England out of Boston. And so you can see on this graph here, we have latent, we have blatant, latent meaning hidden, blatant meaning obvious, aspirational meaning nice to do, critical meaning I must do, right? So if something is latent and aspirational, I'd say find another problem. In other words, if they don't know they have this issue, and even if they did have it as an issue, it would be nice to do, but they don't really care about it, well, you're barking up a very unproductive tree, right? Now, if there's something that they really want to do, it generates excitement, but it's not critical, they may never take action, right? They may never take action. They might, but they might not. It's not the highest place to be. Now, if there's a problem, let's just take life insurance, right? If someone doesn't have life insurance or doesn't have enough life insurance, they may not realize they don't have enough life insurance. So it's latent, but we know it's critical in our world, right? Same thing with long-term care, DI, all the various things, different type of investment vehicles, et cetera, right? So the ideal place, of course, to be is where the problem is blatant and critical. They know about it and it's important to them. They must take action. Now, a lot of financial folks play in the latent and critical, right? And that's where education is involved. And that's where you teach people things and you ask questions and you probe. And that's great. And so you elevate, first of all, you show them that they have a problem, right? So now it's becoming blatant, obvious. And then you tie to them the criticalness of this problem and the cost of not taking action. Now you have a blatant and critical problem, and that's where people will invest time and money and energy to fix. So we want to target this as best we can. If we're dealing with some current concerns or opportunities that a prospect has, and we haven't yet brought it to this blatant and critical, then we may be wasting our time. We have to bring it to this level. And I just found this is really helpful when I'm on the phone with people. How bad do they want to solve this? What's the cost of not doing anything, right? We find out how critical this is and how important it is to them. So let's get a little more into the message that you share with people. I mean, where do you share your message? Well, everywhere, right? Everywhere you and everyone who works with you goes, you're sharing your value proposition in some form or another. And so my question for you is, what are you trying to accomplish when you communicate your value in a website, in an email, on a LinkedIn profile, in a brochure, in a talk in front of prospects? What are you trying to accomplish? Are you just trying to impress people? Here's my credentials. We work at the best firm to work at, firm, or, I've been doing this for 25 years or whatever. I'm not saying that credibility isn't important in you delivering the message. It is, but not at the very beginning. One of the biggest mistakes people make on their website in this industry is they try to establish credibility before they establish empathy. They try to be the hero when you're not the hero, all right? You're the guide. Your clients are the heroes. Your prospects are the heroes. They want to be the heroes to their own story. And so the first thing you want to do with your website or any other messaging is draw them in with that sense of empathy, that sense of knowingness about them, not to impress them. You're also trying to attract the right people, right? You're speaking and writing in ways that the right people will see the message, and the wrong people either won't notice the message or they won't be interested in it. Now, if you're just getting started, okay, I get it. Maybe you take on some folks you wouldn't normally take on once you're 10 years into the business. But eventually you want to get to that place where you're attracting the right people, repelling the wrong people, and moving them to take action. Whether it's to reply to your email or return a voicemail or whatever request you may have. How do you move people to take action? All of this is in how you communicate your message, right? And ultimately, you want to determine for you and for them, is it a fit? With all this talk about differentiation, what makes you different, what makes you unique, look, it's good to talk about that. I get that. That does help you resonate with people. But at the end of the day, all that prospect that you're courting wants to know, are you the right person for them? Right? Are you the right person for them? That's what they really want to know. And that's an emotional response, by the way. It could be based on certain facts and figures and statistics, and it could be based on personality and trust, which is also an emotional response. But ultimately, are you the right fit for them? So this is what you're trying to do, right? Attract the right people, disqualify the wrong people, create action, determine fit. So let's get to the what do you do? I told you earlier about the formula, that if you just send me an email and say, Bill, send me the what do you do formula, I'll send it to you. But let's work it real quick here on the screen. First of all, expert. Are you an expert? So the dictionary defines expert as a person who has special skill or knowledge in some particular field, or a specialist or an authority. Are you an expert? Yes, you are an expert. Now, I get some compliance offices won't allow you to use the word expert unless you have very specific education or credentialing. And a lot of people struggle with saying I'm an expert in any way. So a way to soften this and a way to become compliant is to use the word expertise. My expertise is. Now, if someone asks you what you do, or you're volunteering what you do in an email or whatever the encounter may be, rather than saying you're a financial advisor or financial planning or insurance agent or insurance professional, whatever your title is, don't do that, because you don't know what their reaction is going to be to how you state your title. If you say I'm a financial advisor, maybe they think Bernie Madoff, right? You don't know what's going to come up. They've had a bad experience. Maybe they sued their last one. Who knows? So you want that to come up a little bit later. The title almost doesn't matter. So when you say your expertise is in, it displays confidence without feeding into preconceived notions. I work with, this qualifies, demonstrates who your target market is. I work with women in transition, women recently divorced or widowed. I work with small business owners in the printing industry. I work with executives and high-level managers in Procter & Gamble, right? And then who want to. The who want to speaks to the benefits. Whatever your right fit client wants, whatever your target market wants, and you can deliver that, that's the benefit. And it also creates emotion. And since you're dealing with money and financial matters, there's always emotion there, right? Anytime money's involved, there's emotion. And then the value in action is the for example, or maybe your client-focused why of why you're in this business, why you're still in this business, why you transferred to a different firm, etc. So let me give you two real-world examples. Some of my coaching clients, and these are works in progress. We're still working through these, but they're pretty decent. So Vince says, I specialize in financial planning for fast-paced owners and entrepreneurs. When we were talking, he lit up every time he talked about working with entrepreneurs that are cutting edge and fast-paced and building their business. He just likes being around that. And so I said, well, let's say that. Let's attract those people to you by talking about it in that way, right? So I work with successful business owners who want to focus on what they do best, running their business and making money, right? And that's the people he wants to attract. This message resonates with them. And then he has a, for example, he presents himself as a financial quarterback, etc. And that brings the other three things into life, right? So that's one example. Another one, and in by the way, in our complimentary strategy session, we can work through this with you if you'd like. Happy to help you in that way. So Oscar, he says, my expertise is in providing support, guidance, and resources to women going through significant transitions in their lives. Oscar wants to be more than a financial planner, a financial advisor. He wants to be a guide. He wants to be a counselor almost, a consultant for women going through tough times. And finances are part of that, right? So that's the way he talks about his work. I work with women who are widowed, divorced, or facing divorce. See, he also wants to work with people before they become divorced, because there are certain decisions they should be making, even if they're just thinking about it, right, before they go through with it, who want to make an educated decisions that are in their best interest and eliminate the fear of moving forward on their own. The fear of moving forward on their own. Those are emotional words that resonate with his target market. Are you using words that resonate with your target market? And then he has a long for example here of how he helped a particular client. So I think you can see that this simple formula actually communicates quite a lot. It communicates your expertise. It communicates who you work with. It identifies the market. It communicates how you help those people, what they want, how you pull the benefits, and then you elaborate a little bit on a for example. So if you want to get this formula, just send me your email address, billcates@referralcoach.com. I forgot to put that on this slide. billcates@referralcoach.com, and I'll get this off to you pretty quick. Oh, there it is. Hello. All right. Any questions coming through? No questions. So I'm either dazzling you with this information or everyone's left. And if you want to schedule a complimentary strategy session to go through some of the things we're talking about here, or talk about referrals, if you want to talk about that instead, just shoot me an email and we'll get you on the calendar and see how we can help you out. And don't forget the book. It's available now. And the site's a little rough, the Amazon site, but it is available. So if you're interested. So let's talk about the impact of all of this and how we create a compelling message. So what's the biggest objection or challenge we face with prospects? I already said this at the beginning. Were you listening? So Bruce says, great material, just a lot very fast. Well, I hope you're taking notes, Bruce. So it's inertia, right? They're either stuck doing nothing or they're stuck moving in a direction. And how do you deal with that, right? Well, who is this guy? When I do a live presentation, I hear Mozart, I hear Beethoven, I hear lots of different stuff. And then I draw this little formula and they go, oh, Sir Isaac Newton. I go, that's exactly right? One of the fathers of physics. And so Newton's first law of motion looks like this, but I'm going to paraphrase it. A body in motion tends to stay in motion. A body at rest tends to remain at rest unless acted upon by an outside force, right? So if you have prospects that are in inertia and they're doing nothing, they've got their head buried in the sand, or they're moving in a certain direction that may or may not be in their best interest, but they're resistant to your message, then you've got to become that outside force, right? What does it get someone to change? Become that outside force. Create that emotional response. Bring the problem from aspirational to critical, from latent to blatant, so they know there's something they should do. And that's how that all comes from the questions you ask and from the things you teach. So how do you become compelling, right? How do you become that outside force to move people to take action? Well, I'll give you a few things, right, that can help you lead to action. One of the things you can do is help create clarity for your clients and prospects. So here's a simple way to think about it. What's their here to there? And I got this concept from Bill Whitley at Charlotte, North Carolina. What is their here? When it's around their finances, right? Where's their money? What insurance do they have in place? What's their benefits package? All, family size, all this stuff. What does their here look like? And that a lot of people come to you aren't clear on their here. And so if you can get them clear on all that, you've already provided some great value. And then also help them get clear on their there. What does their there look like 5 years from today, 10 years, 20 years, 25 years? Help them get clear on that future of what they want to create for themselves, that legacy they want to leave. And as you know, some people are very clear, they've done that work, and other people are clueless. And then when you help them figure out what their here is and what their there is and what the opportunities are and what the challenges are to make all that happen, and you create that clarity for them, their brains love that. Remember, a confused mind will not take action. So if you're delivering your message and people are confused, right, you're not as clear as you need to be, they're going to go away, right? You ever had someone who seemed interested, but then all of a sudden went missing in action? Someone seemed responsive to the introduction. Maybe you had the first meeting, or maybe you sent an email and it goes nowhere. Well, were we relevant enough and were we compelling enough? And did we bring clarity? Now, there's two ways we bring clarity. One is their own personal clarity around their here and their there and their challenges and uh, opportunities, it's also clarity in working with us. What is the next step? Make sure you're very clear. Notice earlier I showed you Russ Thornton's website where he had a 3-step process. Let's schedule a phone call. Let's do, evaluation. We'll take a look at your situation, right? And then we'll create a plan and we'll go from there, right? Very clear. They need to be clear on how to work with you. If they're not clear on how to move forward with you, then they won't. They'll go away. Creating action through, one more thing I want to talk about clarity. Sorry. I had a guy it came to me for coaching, and it wasn't a good match. And it wasn't a good match because I didn't think I could help the guy. He actually was, I was first contacted by his wife who works in the firm, and he says, we get people to our seminars, and from there we get people into the office, but we just can't seem to get them to the next appointment. And I said, all right, well, tell me more. Well, George knows so much. He knows so much. He just gives the people everything. And he just, as they're leaving, he gives them more information. And I go, all right, time out. He's confusing them, isn't he? He's giving them too much information. She says, yeah, he is, right? This guy he does an information dump, and these people get confused and they don't know where to go next. Sometimes simplicity creates clarity. All right, well, moving on here. Urgency, will create movement. And so one of the great questions you might want to ask is what's at risk if we do nothing, right? If you're talking about, let's say, life insurance, then what's at risk, right? Paint the picture. Look, you can stay where you are, right? And you do have some life insurance in place. And if you don't do anything, here's what's at risk, right? Here's the risk you're putting yourself and your family up against. If you're willing to do that, that's your decision, right? But it's same thing with not having a financial plan in place or long-term care or whatever it may be. This is how sometimes you can create urgency. Urgency is very important to creating action, right? Sporting events always create a sense of urgency by the clock or by the number of innings or by the number of holes they play or the score, depending on the sport, right? Creating urgency. And then loss aversion. And this is kind of a neat concept. And I'm learning about this from a gentleman by the name of Preet Banerjee up in Canada. And this is what he's discovered in his research. He says, your clients are more sensitive to losses than gains of equal magnitude. The magnitude of the emotional response to losing $100 is greater than the magnitude of the emotional response to gaining $100 by as much as 2 to 1. So the emotional response to losing 5% in the market is twice that to the emotional response of gaining, right? When people gain in the market goes up. Oh, good. My account went up a percent today. That's great. Feel good. But if it goes down, they go, oh man, is my guy doing the right thing here, right? It's just a stronger emotional response. And so this loss aversion is a great, powerful thing for you guys to tap into. So there's the book again. I hit you over the head with that one. And don't forget the strategy session. If you want to set one up, just shoot me an email. Now I'm open for questions. What questions do you have? Right now, there aren't any coming through. So I'm going to pause for a second and take a sip of water. What questions do you have around the material we covered, around target market, around finding out who your bullseye is, around creating more compelling value for folks, to reaching people that are hard to reach? Or if you have a question around referrals, the topic that I've been teaching for 25 years. Well, I am not seeing anything. That's pretty amazing. So I either gave you too much or not enough, or I don't know what it is. But I'll finish off with this. You got to be relevant or you're going to be ignored. And you got to be compelling or you're going to be forgotten. And that's why we're talking about radical relevance. So I hope you found value in today's. So we finally got a question. Do you have any modules online that coordinate with your book? Yes, as a matter of fact, I do. It's in our the Cates Academy, the CatesAcademy.com. The CatesAcademy.com is where we have that, and I'll send that information out to everybody. And someone else raised their hand. There we go. I guess it's just a little delayed here on questions. Good. So going from being interested at the seminar and then can't get them to follow through or answer the phone. That's my challenge. Well, Ben, it's hard to know exactly what's going on. I'd be happy to do a complimentary strategy session to help with that a little bit because I got to get a little more context. But obviously, I mean, from the surface, based on what we're talking about, is there isn't a compelling enough reason. In other words, either they don't trust you, which I'm going to say is probably not the case, or it's going to be that you haven't given them, what's at risk of doing nothing, right? It's whatever you've suggested they do, maybe they're viewing as aspirational and not critical. Nice to do. Let's get to that someday. Yeah, that would be good to do. We should do that someday, as opposed to we got to get this done, right? And Ben's the guy to help us do this. So pretty important that you create that sense of urgency around this. Usually it's best at seminars to have people sign up at the seminar for a phone appointment, get them on a list, get them on a chart, and then confirm that later if you can, rather than trying to follow up and schedule the appointment afterwards. Have an assistant there, have the availability of time sitting there on a couple, 2, 3, 4 pieces of paper where people can sign a slot, and you remind them of that, and you send a little more something of value and a little more reason why they should connect with you, and that will help. But we can talk offline on that. You can send me an email on that as well. Now I saw that somebody raised their hand, but it's not showing up in there. So if I'm missing somebody, you please shoot me an email, and I apologize. But anyway, I think that's it. Nothing else coming through. Remember, it's Bill Cates at referralcoach.com. So feel free to shoot me a message if I missed a question or something because I'm missing the technology here. Just shoot it to me in an email, and we'll do our best to help you out. And we will send a recording to you, and feel free to listen again, of course, and share it with others. And again, a thank you to my friends at Insurance WebEx for making this possible. Thanks, everybody.